Hello, ladies and gentlemen of the world, and welcome to our launch. This is IDL101, Adding Interactivity with IDL Studio. My companion here is somebody relatively new. His name is Victor. Hey, Victor, you want to say hi?
Hi.
Any of you who have worked in the past and been in communication with our help desk have probably run into Victor. Victor works with generating content as well as solving a lot of our tickets when they come in. And I am your faithful host, Brian, and I am the platform evangelist for LOD. We are going to be talking about how you take your basic lab and add it, make excitement. Put things like a set of videos that you want to display along with your content, or step-by-step instructions or guidance and things like that. We're going to talk about how to add content to your content. Now, I do see some questions that have come in about the last session, and specifically, how do I start doing this and how do I start doing that? And specifically that there was an error with an ISO. I don't know how to solve that problem with the ISO, but you can contact our help desk at support@learnondemandsystems.com, and they will be able to assist you. Otherwise, you can reach out and get your email address to the person who is, whoever your contact is at our company, and we will make sure that we set that up for you. So, Victor, adding content, adding interactivity. Why do we do it? Why don't we just run a lab that has a bunch of VMs in it and then that's it?
Well, if you're running a lab, there needs to be content, or at least something that guides the student on what to do, steps. Traditionally, the content is added there as a manual. Usually there's a manual.
Exactly.
Okay, that is added traditionally to these labs. But now we have a way to, with IDL, to be able to interactively add those steps without using a manual. And it's built into LOD.
Right. Perfect. So let's take a look at what we've got here. We are talking about IDL Studio specifically. And if you remember from the keynote this morning, Corey mentioned IDL standing for Integrated Digital Labs.
Right.
And so that's what we're really talking about. But we actually have a tool inside of the Lab on Demand environment with a developer account. You can use what we call IDL Studio. Now, to get IDL Studio actually has a little bit of prep work, and I'm not kidding when I say a little bit, because it's a checkbox and a piece of, or checking out the data. Then we're going to talk about exercises and tasks, which are, like you mentioned, the step-by-steps, putting those in there so that you can guide your students to what they need to do. We're going to talk about putting in alerts and knowledge articles or knowledge information, being able to switch between a PC and or mount media and unmount media. And then the video and screenshots. Now this is something that's big. That's what a lot of people like. And the ability to take what you've got and be able to record video, to be able to educate, and then sort of tie all of your education into step-by-step instructions as well. So we're going to talk about that as well as screenshots and the easy way of capturing screenshots. And then finally, we're going to talk about type text and commands, features that 90% of our audience don't know about, but are actually really, really cool. So we're going to talk about how we use those as well. So let us get started. We're going to talk about the prep work that is needed in order to be able to use IDL Studio. And using IDL Studio is not fundamentally difficult. You turn it on, and then you go in and you add your content. Now, we're going to be approaching this from using the IDL Studio perspective, but we do want to make sure that we let our more formatting friends or format-friendly friends that there are templates that they can download and for Microsoft Word and MD format, Markdown language format. And then they can actually start adding content into a template and then import that template in instead of actually doing the work inside of IDL Studio. A little beyond the scope of what we're doing here, but I do want to let you know that that functionality is available. So what does it take to actually get this thing to work? So I'm just going to switch here to a lab interface that I have. First of all, I want to show you what a lab looks like before IDL Studio is turned on. So I have a lab running here, and you'll notice that this is the format that the lab will typically start in. It will have a machine over on the right-hand side, and we're stuck. If I'm an end user, I look at this and go, okay, what do I do next? I'm sitting at a desktop. Do I click on the Start menu? Do I go to the store? Do I open up Edge? I don't know what the next step is. And if I look under my content,
There's nothing there.
there's nothing there.
Right.
There's no guidance. And what you said, it was absolutely correct. We are trying to guide the learner through what they're supposed to do. So let me get out of this lab, but I did want to make sure that you got to see what a lab looked like before and after. So I'm ending my lab, I'm closing it, and now I'm going to go back in, I'm going to do the prep work that is necessary to enable content. So I click on Edit, and as I mentioned in a previous session, if you haven't had a chance to check that out, make sure you watch the recording for IDL 100. Down at the very bottom of the first page, the Basic Information tab, there is a checkbox. And I'm not joking when I say that's all you need, is you need to click on the checkbox. By the way, this is now a good time to ensure, since you are putting content in place, that you put your name and your email address. I wish that was our email address, don't you? For those of you who don't know, our domain is learnondemandsystems.com
with
an S.com.
Right.
All right, so it's always a good idea to make sure that your content owner name gets put in. If you don't do that, we don't know who to contact when your lab has issues.
That is correct.
And that is essential for our help desk. So I click on Save, and then I click on OK, and there we are. That's it. Well, there's one extra thing, and this is one that usually catches people. Once you check that box, you're like, okay, I should have IDL content, right? But the next thing you have to do in order to be able to edit that content is to go ahead and check it out. Now, when you check it out, what you're doing is you're putting a little flag up that says, hey, somebody is working inside of this. They're working on content. Not something that is normally required, putting that little flag up. And I equate it to, and I am not a diver. I'm a floater. I stay up at the top of the surface. But with divers, they put a flag up when they're like, hey, there's a diver down here, so don't run me over with a boat. So this is the same kind of thing. It's just more of a warning message. But that checkout now has changed our top menu across the top here. And we now have Launch in IDL Studio as well as Edit IDL Content. And that is where we're going to stop for just a second to go to the next slide. But I do want to let you know that that's what gives us that. Going in and checking the box for IDL Content and making sure that we go ahead and check out the content. When we get to the end of this process, you're going to see me check it in just so that we get rid of that flag and warning, hey, somebody's in here and editing. All right, so let me go back to my slides here. We have the Launch in IDL Studio and the Edit with IDL Studio capability. And I'm going to apologize in advance. I'm using the wrong slide yet again. I did not switch back over.
Oh, okay.
We were supposed to have the content or the name of the information up here by the 01.
Oh, that's
so
right.
that's how I can tell I'm using the wrong slides. But I apologize. We'll make sure we get the right slides to you, or so that you can see them. So the first thing we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about exercises and tasks. And doing exercises and tasks are very simple. This is probably the easiest thing. The only key that you have to remember, especially when it comes to task, is where things appear. Because when you put the name in, that's what appears over on the right-hand side. But when you put the text in, that's what appears along the bottom. So that's actually the step.
That's right.
Okay. So let's go ahead and take a look at the exercises and tasks. So the way I'm going to do this is by launching in IDL Studio. Now, there are a lot of people who are wondering what the difference between launching in IDL Studio and editing in IDL Studio. And I'm going to show you what editing in IDL Studio, or what they call edit IDL content, looks like, because I want you to see how quick and easy it is. When you click on this, you see that it immediately switches over. Now, please ignore the fact that there is already some content in place. I put that in place so that we don't have to go through and wait for me to upload videos and things like that. But if I click on OK here, you'll notice that I do have the ability to edit my information, my step-by-step, my tasks, and so on, but I have no VM. That's by design. This gives us the ability to be able to edit the content without loading the VM or VMs, which gives us a quick and easy edit.
Right.
But it's really tricky to know exactly what screen is going to appear to tell people instructions. You typically don't want to write your instructions in this. This is primarily for editing. Since it's got that word. Exactly. So you edit in here. So if you've got to put something in bold or change a TEH, which I do all the time, to the word the, you know, those kind of quick edits, that's what this is designed for. Now, you could completely edit in here if you really had your VMs memorized so you knew exactly what was going to appear. But as you'll see, there is some functionality that's present inside of the IDL Studio instead of editing the IDL content. So in this particular case, I'm going to exit out of here and go back to where I was, and then I'm going to click on Launch in IDL Studio. This, as you will see, will actually load up the lab and give you your VMs. Now, there's only a single VM in here, so we've got it set up so that it will boot pretty quickly. But once it boots, it will give us that exact same editing environment and the VM at the same time. So here we are. We can see that we've got our lab interface, and then we've got an exercise summary along the right-hand side, and then our step-by-step instructions along the bottom. As I have mentioned to you in the past, I have put some content already in here just so that I don't have to type a lot. You guys don't want to watch me type. It is a exercise in frustration watching me type because I backspace and forward space and all that kind of stuff. So let's talk about exercises and tasks first. The first, adding a new exercise is pretty simple. You give the exercise a name, and we're going to call this exercise 10, just to give it a number. And then an introductory message, and this message is what appears when this exercise is reached. So you have reached exercise 10. Yay, team. Okay, so we have a message up there. We do have formatting options in here, changing the fonts and the bolds and the italics and things like that. And there is another very important box down here, and that is introduction content URL. And the reason that this is so important is because you can put any URL anywhere in the world and put it in here, and that will load in a separate window for a subset window that comes up over the top of the lab or the exercise, so that you could send people to a video, for instance, that's hosted externally, or go to a website and have it display. It's really good for getting a message out and says, here's what's coming up, and then it actually takes them in and does the lab. This is how you get information into a lab where you, for example, if you want to have a video introduction, in this section, we're going to do this. And that's all the video has to be. It doesn't have to be anything big and fancy.
So basically, it's breaking things up.
Yes.
Just like you would create an outline when writing, when you first start writing something, this kind of allows you to kind of organize things in a way so that, in a step-by-step way.
Exactly correct. Exactly correct. And there is also a message that will display when you have completed that particular exercise. And remember, an exercise is typically a collection of tasks. So we break it down into two levels. Here's in general what you're trying to accomplish, and here are the tasks that you need to perform in order to accomplish that one goal.
Yeah.
And so you can give them a message that says, congratulations, you have completed. And you could also put a video in that says, this is what we just learned. Here's what you just did. You could have another external link to another video. So I don't have the video in, but I am going to go ahead and click on OK. And notice as soon as I make a new task, or excuse me, a new exercise, it automatically creates a new task for me. And the reason it does that is because you're going to do something as a task. Even if it is, congratulations, you've clicked on this,
right.
You're going to do something. Now here is the important, or here are the important two entries in this task. One is the name. Remember what I told you about the name? This appears on the right-hand side, okay? And I'm going to show you in a second, once I click on OK, where that actually appears. And then the text is what appears down below. And once again, you do have some text formatting options here. You want to be careful about going too crazy with your formatting, because otherwise it makes it very difficult to read down in that specific section. Using the defaults that are there is usually what's best, but you certainly can modify it. So this is an... See, I told you I was going to backspace a lot. Task. I can't type. Task. Text. That's the word I was looking for. All right, now I'm going to click on Save. And notice now exercise 10 appears right in the middle of exercise 1 and 2. Not numerically correct in most cases, unless you're using some sort of weird binary.
Right, right.
But the good news is that you can actually move this by clicking on the little down or up arrow. So if I wanted to, I could move it before exercise 1, or I can move it. I didn't move it below. Here we go. Here's what I was looking for. I can move it down below exercise 2, which is kind of where it belongs.
Right.
So notice this appears along the right-hand side, is up here, and then here is an example of the text appears along the bottom. And that's it. That's really all it takes to put step-by-step instructions in. You check a box inside of the lab profile, you check it out, and then you launch an IDL Studio, putting in a new exercise and a new task. But that's only the start. And you could certainly do content this way. You could just have your step-by-step instructions with the guide along the right-hand side with the name, and then the text appearing along the bottom as the actual task step itself. But there's more to it. There's some cooler things that you can do. We've got lots of icons down here that we can use. So the first ones that we're going to talk about, and I'm going to switch back to my slide here for a second, is we're going to talk about alerts and knowledge.
Right.
So help me out with this.
Okay.
I want a end user who's using this lab to know about something before they accidentally click the wrong thing. If they click on cancel, it's going to destroy their lab. If they click on OK, everything's going to be fine. Which of these two would I use for that?
You would use alerts.
You would use alerts. That is
because basically you want to alert them before they do anything else. This is what you need to do, or not do.
Or not do.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
And it really, alert is not meant to be Danger Will Robinson, you know, wavy arm guy. It should be something that is important for the student or end user to know before they proceed. So let's go ahead and take a look here at what an alert looks like here down in exercise 10. I'm going to use the exact same exercise and task here for adding these things, and then we'll go back to some of the examples that I had pre-configured. So you see here that we have a red space and a little icon that shows, hey, there's something important here. And the thing you need to remember about alerts is, once again, they can be configured just like they can be edited and bolded and all that other kind of stuff, just like any of the other text. It does support formatting. But this is typically something that you want to be important enough to interrupt the learning, okay? And that's really what I use as the alert. There are some specific examples that we can give. where if a user were to happen to select all of the drives in a exercise instead of selecting just a couple of them, they could potentially damage their VM and end up having to restart an hour or two long lab. And this is not a function of some sort of problem. It's just the way that the lab is built. It happens to be you have to select just these specific disks. That's a perfect case of using an alert, letting somebody know, hey, make sure you do this. But it doesn't have to be severe. You could just say, hey, you should log in before you do the next step, or you know, you should make sure you use this password because otherwise it won't work. Something like that. So I'm going to put in here, this is an example of a very important message. Okay? So if this is an alert and it's important, isn't knowledge important too?
Well, it is, but the difference is knowledge is not necessarily something that is alerting you to do something that's important.
Right.
Knowledge is more of, okay, maybe you're trying to explain something further that needs to be explained, or passing along some more content so that the student can learn something new.
Yep.
So
I equate knowledge with wisdom. That isn't always true, but
right.
And you sometimes have to go seeking wisdom. And that's the thing with knowledge, is that it doesn't kind of get up all in your face. It is something you go seeking because it doesn't appear automatically. So we'll show you what we mean by that in just a second. And since I said that, this is, actually we'll put knowledge, if I could type, equals wisdom. Okay, I'll put those two in. So now, you'll notice right away we get the jiggly icons. This is one feature that I absolutely love inside of our lab interface. These icons down here will bounce up and down as you go to them. So if I go to exercise 2 and go to my example, you saw the video, and then if I go to exercise 1, you see the...
And it lets the student know, hey, there's something here that you probably need to look at.
Right, exactly. And even if it's out of the corner of their eye, they'll still see that bounce.
That's right.
You'll notice that they can't miss the alert.
No, the alert comes up right away. That little red box comes up right away.
Exactly, and it stays there until the student actually clicks on the X. And by the way, I apologize, I use the term student interchangeably with end user. So
or end user, yeah.
So the nice thing about this alert thing is that it is an automatic function. It is something that you don't have to set. It just appears. So once again, they actually have to click on it to get things out of the way so that they can actually do what they need to do. And if they need to come back, all they have to do is click on the icon and it pops right back up and stays. I mean, I'm doing stuff in the background here and it stays up. All right? So now, remember how I said you had to kind of go seek knowledge?
Right.
You'll notice that the icon is here, but no message pops up unless you actually click on it. And then it actually gives you that piece of knowledge or information. And what you said before about additional guidance or more information or more content, it's beautiful stuff.
Yeah, and it's perfect for an instructor who, you know, is trying to, I guess, give additional knowledge, you know, to that end user or student, like you said. Yeah. So we have put a exercise in place, we have put a task in place, and we've taken that task and added both an alert and knowledge. So what was next on our list? PC switch and media control. Now, this is something that a lot of people don't think about, and it's really kind of a shame because it is possible to switch between virtual machines in our environment. Now, in this particular lab that we're working with, there's only one machine, so switching between machines isn't a big deal. Right, right.
But in a lot of cases, you have certainly seen some monster labs.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
And so have I. There are often very specific instructions on you should switch to this machine, and then you have to leave the content, go to the machine, select it, and then come back.
Right.
And that's also true with the DVD media. If you wanted to insert a particular removable media profile, you have to go to the Machines tab and go to the drop-down list and put it in place. Well, we can make it so that they never have to leave the content pane to go do that stuff.
Right.
So how do we do that? Let's go back to our lab here. And inside of our lab, and I'll make this full screen so it makes it a little bit easier to see. Inside of this lab, we have our knowledge and alert, but how do I actually get it so that I don't have to click on machines and do the drop down and put the office media in play?
Right.
Or switch machines. And the way you do that is by clicking on the edit button. And there is, and trust me, we're going to come back to the video options in just a few minutes. There is a VM select and a floppy drive and a DVD drive. Now, floppy drive will only appear in Gen 1 Hyper-V machines because that's where you can use virtual floppies. You wouldn't have that option to be able, well, I mean, the option would exist, but you would never have a virtual floppy in a Gen 2.
Yeah, you'll not see it in Gen 2.
Right. So we do have the VM select, and I'm going to select it as Windows 10, even though it's already selected, because I want to show you what the icon looks like. But other than that, you could have this, any one of the machines, the virtual machines inside of this lab could exist inside this drop-down list, so you can have it switched.
Right, and depending, so excuse me, depending upon how many VMs are in that lab, when you click on that drop-down, you're going to see all those VMs.
That's
so
correct.
You'll be able to choose whichever VM you want it to go to in that step.
Absolutely. So we click on that drop-down, and then we don't have any virtual floppy media, but we do have a DVD, so I can actually go in and say, I want to insert this particular media into that machine. So, and we're going to come back to the commands later as well. I'm going to click on Save. Now, notice that my icons on the left side haven't changed any. We still have our red alert because the page has refreshed. I still have my knowledge, but if you look over to the right-hand side, even though they don't jiggle, and we need to go to full screen on this in order to see this more effectively.
There it is.
There it is. You can see on the right-hand side, you can see the machine selection as well as the DVD drive insertion. So just to prove a point, I'm going to go to my machines, and you can see there's nothing in the media right now.
Right.
If I click on the little disk icon, and wait a second, and go back, you will see that there's media installed, and if I actually, click on the right thing, and go to this PC, you will see that
the drive is there.
Yep, there we go. Wanted to make sure I opened it instead of actually running the installation. The information is actually there. It is mounted as a DVD drive. This is invaluable for helping students. Without making them go do extra things, they can click right in the instruction. But in the instruction, you have to say something like, click on the icon to the right in order for them to understand that that's what they're supposed to do. Just seeing an icon there won't necessarily guide them enough to make them do what needs to be done there. And you can also put a command in inside of your content to eject that drive. Remember, it's already mounted, so if I click on Save Now, notice that it changes the icon in the bottom right corner. If I'll readjust it, make it easier to see here, you see that it changes the icon, and now if I go back and take a look at my machines, it has removed the media and essentially ejected it from the machine. So great stuff, really easy to do, and by having them go to a specific machine and insert or remove the media as necessary, you make it really, really simple for users to be able to stay in the content and not have to go searching for things. All right, so we're doing really good. We're covering all of the information that needs to be covered. The next thing is videos and screenshots. Where do you want the video to appear and for how long? Now that's a big question, and we're going to talk about that. And then using screenshots to actually guide learners to make sure that they're where they need to be.
Right.
And we're going to talk about how you capture those screenshots as well as the potential for uploading your own. So I'm going to go back into my lab interface here. And so let's talk about video. Now, I have already done a step in here where I have uploaded video because I wanted to make sure that people weren't sitting here watching me spin up a video that took forever to load.
Right.
But this is an example of a video option here. And you can see that I don't have the screenshot captured, but I do, in this field, have a link to a internally hosted or a LODS hosted video. And having video up on our servers is very nice and handy, but it isn't the only way that you can go. You can also go with externally hosted media. Externally hosted means that you could actually take a YouTube video, strip off the correct embedding codes or make sure that you get just the right code, put that in as an external reference, and you can now have YouTube videos as part of your guide to what students should be doing.
Right.
You can also decide whether or not it shows automatically or if it waits for the student to actually click on it. So I've got it set to not show automatically, and it is internally hosted. And you'll see that one of the icons is lit up here, and that is the video icon. And I did go out and cheat a little bit and got one of our launch videos and put that in place, and specifically for IDL101. And the audio is off on my machine, so that's why you don't hear anything running right now.
Right.
But the cool thing is that this video is here, it's playing, it's teaching somebody something, and then they're going to go in and do the exercise. But I didn't automatically start it. I had to manually, as a student, come in and launch it. So I could actually go in here and say show automatically, and I have a choice of saying always show automatically, which means whenever the student comes back to this step, it automatically shows. Or I can have it just show that automatically the first time, and then from that point on, they have to click on it.
Okay.
And then I also have the choice of show in dialogue or not show in dialogue. So I'm going to show you first what happens when I say show automatically. And I click on save. At least I think. There we go. I click on save. So now I'm going to refresh my page here so that I actually get my done buttons. There we go. So I click on done, and now this exercise will demonstrate the videos, and notice the video is actually already starting in the background.
Right.
That's the thing when you put a video right next to an exercise and have it set to show automatically, it's going to start up because it's the first task after you've launched the exercise.
Right.
So it's going to trigger that right away. But it does run it, and it shows it in this environment. Now I'm going to turn off the automatic functionality and set it to show in dialogue and save it. And now when I launch the video, and again you could combine these differently, instead of showing down in that little window, it shows over the top of what you're doing. Now this can be a real advantage because you can set it up so that your student has to see this video or has to close out of the video in order to actually get at the lab. Whereas if it's just running down in the corner, it could actually be running in the background while the student's doing stuff in the lab.
Right.
This way you can't really get to the lab and do anything without completing the video. So videos can be used to really add some spice, some real good external content, but you have to be careful with video. A, you don't want to have somebody sit there for half an hour watching a video before they can actually do something in their lab. And B, when you're using video, you have to use it so that it is actually reinforcing what the student is doing. Otherwise, it looks sort of like, well, somebody put video there just to put video there.
Right.
Oops. I think I accidentally clicked on I clicked on a button on my whatchamacallit, my touchpad.
Your touchpad.
And so it switched. So sorry about that out there. All right, so an important thing, an important distinction to make when you're doing your video is to make sure that you do video that is thoughtfully used, as Tim Gunn says on Project Runway. You don't want to just throw video in for video's sake.
Right. It has to have some kind of function or something that needs to be, like you said, taught, something extra.
Right.
So within the class. Yeah.
It can be a way of really adding value, but it is something that you really want to be judicious with. All right, so we've talked about putting videos in place. Now we want to talk about what can you do to emphasize that if a student is following, an end user is following along, and they get lost, they want, you know, their screen's supposed to look a certain way. The knowledge article says make sure that you return 150 records, and they don't know how to tell that it has returned 150 records. You can use screenshots to really show what they're supposed to be doing.
Right.
So I'm going to say that they are supposed to be searching their C drive, or we'll say searching the C drive for something called Windows, okay? And you'll notice that we get lots and lots of results. Now, let's just say that these are the results that we want them to see. So we want to capture this so that it guides the student along so that the student can actually see what's happening. So how would we do that? Well, we could take a screenshot of it ourselves using the snipping tool or something else.
Or Snagit or
Snagit, any one of those tools, right. We could just capture it, and then we could upload that. And the way you do that is by clicking on the little upload button here, finding it on your machine, and clicking on it and uploading it. Once again, you can also externally host these pictures or get them from a website if you have the legal permissions to do so, obviously. And screenshots, like videos, you can have them show automatically. You can have them show in a dialogue so that they come up on top of something as well.
So as long as you have access to that storage, that place, that area where you put that screenshot, then you can point to it and pull it up.
And that's also very helpful because then when you edit it and it gets changed on that location, it'll get changed when the student sees it as well.
That's right.
All right, but the nice feature is that you don't even have to do that, because inside of IDL Studio, if you have a developer license, you can go to the developer box and click on Take Screenshot. So I do that, and not only does it take a screenshot, look down in the left-hand corner, it automatically puts it in place inside of the step that you're currently on. So if I go back and look here, you can see that the screenshot's already been put in place and is ready to go.
That makes it convenient.
It does make it very convenient. And so now when a student is doing a search and they're inside of the lab, and let's say they're accidentally looking inside the music folder and typing Windows, they can look at it and they go, well, I didn't get any results, and let's say that the exercise said that you were supposed to get some results. They can look at the screenshot. I captured the enhanced controller, so I accidentally got a screenshot of the wrong thing there. But the answer is that it would take a screenshot of whatever you had and put it in place and show it correctly. All right, so we've talked about inserting media, putting the steps in, putting video options in. There's one thing left. There's one thing left on our list that we didn't show, and that's the commands. Absolutely love the functionality of this, and I love to show it off. So let's say that you have something that you need the student to do in order to get ready for the next exercise, or for whatever step they're working on. You want to have them execute a specific command. You could put that information in and step-by-step instructions, and they could try to copy and paste, but that doesn't usually work so well. There are some difficulties with copy and paste. So what can you do? Well, in the recent times, we have added the ability for us to be able to put either commands or what we call type text in place. Okay? So I'm going to show you the difference between these two. And one is that our type text can type anything. So I'm going to actually create a second task inside of here. Oops, there we go. Exercise 1. I went in exercise 2. There we go. New task. And I'm going to call this example of type text. And down here, actually I'm going to put here, click on the icon to the right to see what happens. And then I go all the way down to the command, go to type text, and then I click on, well, you know what? You're my guest today. We'll put Victor is great. There we go. Okay. And then I click on add. So now I've got my example of type text. So let me open up Notepad and then click on the icon to the right like it says here. And it automatically puts that in.
And it shows up.
Victor is great, first of all. And second of all, the ability for you to be able to put things, code snippets, SQL statements, PowerShell, you name it. You put that in, and it makes it so much easier for the end user.
Yeah, that way you can eliminate mistakes, because sometimes people make mistakes when they're typing.
They do.
Okay, and if the instructor wants that end user to not make a mistake when typing, this is a perfect example of what you can do. You know, you can add that button there so that they can press on it. And they won't make that mistake.
Exactly.
It'll type it perfectly.
And one thing that's really nice about this is that it is not meant to replace the educational experience of sometimes getting something wrong.
Right.
So you can say, type the following command and then not give them a type text, just have them actually type that command, because they may get that red text and it may be an educational learning experience. But when you have to have it right, or when you have to have a specific thing in there in a specific format, you put that in and as a type text, and it's great. But let's go back to that example I had before, which is, let's say that there's a command that needs to be run in order to get ready for the next task or the next exercise. So I'm going to go up to my previous example, which has a different icon. You notice the type text looked like a little A next to a text icon.
Right.
This looks like a little lightning bolt, which is awesome because it is inspirational. And in this particular case, I'm not going to show you what it does to begin with.
Okay.
I'm just going to show you what the end result is. So when I click on this, you will see it doesn't look like much happened.
Right.
So did something actually happen? If I go in and take a look here at my PC and go to my C drive and go to the users folder and student, just want to make sure. Okay, good. So the result here is that this PowerShell should put this into the C user student directory. So if I click on this and I look, what this is supposed to be doing is issuing this and redirecting this to a specific location. Well, it's not doing it though. When I click on this, shouldn't something be happening? And if I refresh here, you'll see, well,
it's not doing anything.
Yeah, it might not be doing anything.
Right.
But if I actually run PowerShell, for instance, I can't. Corey's going to fire me because I can't type PowerShell. And now I'm inside of PowerShell. It will give us the opportunity. Let me close my notepad here. I don't need to save my Victor is great. Inside of here,
right,
we should see a proc folder. I'm just making sure that my example, I may have mistyped my example. Hold on 2 seconds here. Make sure that the command works. And remember how we said copying and pasting. There we go. Yep, that's what I expected. It's taking a little while to complete because PowerShell is still loading modules in the background there. But that's the reason why the proc isn't existing there. But in a second here, this should actually finish procking, and then it should be in there. So I think I may have, by preloading this, I may have may have forgotten to preload my environment here.
One of the guests is asking, can type text be dynamic?
Can type text be dynamic? Victor is asking. Actually, I like type text. Hello, ma'am.
Right.
You know, it's a little text thing here. The answer is it can't. This is established before lab launch. So you would build this and then present it to the end user. When the end user launches, it doesn't generate new type text based on what that user is doing, but it is something where you could get it to go and get a variable inside the machine and then do different things based on that variable. So yeah, I mean, you can make it somewhat dynamic, but it isn't something that you can't say, I want you to run command A if it's this or command B if it's that. You could run a separate shell script or PowerShell script that did that calculation, but the type text itself would not be dynamically generated.
Okay.
I hope that answers the question there. And thank you for the question. Now I got it. So I just want to, you can see that I've got my proc in there. And now if I delete that and click on this again, I should get my proc directory, but it's not. Best laid plans of mice and men. Okay, so the proc.txt is the file that would automatically be generated and put in place there.
Right.
Now, I should also note that this is not the only way of doing this. We have PowerShell options. We have PowerShell, which submits it behind the scenes, and then there's PowerShell with UI. And we'll take a look at the guest there in just a couple of seconds.
Okay.
That's promoting that.
Yeah.
We can also issue shell command to the OS or shell commands with UI. The important thing to remember with the UI is that it doesn't always automatically open whatever, like for example, the command prompt. It won't know exactly which command prompt you want to do unless it's a Windows one for sure.
Or PowerShell or any one of those. Okay.
It is, I just realized why this didn't work. I put this in as, there's something on my slide, and Victor, you should have warned me on this. I put this on my slide.
PowerShell and shell commands.
Yes, what's right below it?
Make sure to install integration services to use. So
Yes.
we forgot to install integration.
I specifically didn't because I wanted to show it to fail, and I couldn't remember that I had done that. So before we go back in and fix that, we have a few minutes left. I do want to answer the question. The guest is asking if they're on the LMS side, meaning, and of course we're actually referring to the TMS.
The TMS.
That's right. The training management system. If you were trying to send a specific text to a specific user, you're not going to, you know, this is a great idea for a feature. The ability to be able to say, this X student, I want to send them a specific PowerShell command that
like run this.
Like run this. Now you can do that, and there are functionalities that we're going to talk about when you're with me for the support options.
Right.
Where you can take control and be able to do it.
Yeah, I was about to say that there's a monitoring feature that you can use to do that as an instructor to do that.
Yep.
But yeah, it's
that
specifically no, I don't think so.
Not at this time.
Right.
And Phyllis, who was telling me how to type PowerShell, could have responded to that. But okay, so why didn't my proc work? Why didn't I get my proc text? And I can't believe that I didn't put a note in here that said that.
And I kept on thinking of what more we needed, and I couldn't think of it either. And I should have seen the next slide. So
Well,
Sorry
and
about
we
that.
hadn't gone to the next slide.
Right.
So the one thing that we do want to make sure is that as lab developers, there is, for every Windows installation, there is a specific thing called the integration service. And you, as a lab developer, will be able to put this in place. And you simply click on it, and then it comes up with a little dialog box. You say yes, and it goes through. It's going to do some things here. It's going to pop something up, I hope, or sometimes it won't automatically pop it up, but I will autoplay anyway. And then run setup. So this tool doesn't take very long to install unless you accidentally have to install .NET. Or not accidentally, but if you're using a version of the OS that doesn't already have .NET installed, you sometimes have to install.
Oh, that's right. You have to install .NET in order for it to work. That is correct.
And I click on yes. And this actual installation, especially in 2016 and Windows 10, doesn't take very long. And then once that is in place, sometimes you have to reset, sometimes you don't.
Phyllis says, I will add that LOD now. Has an API that allows for a system like RTMS to send data into a lab profile.
Into a lab profile.
Into a lab profile.
It is possible to get that information out of a lab profile from the information that's coming in. That is absolutely correct. But you would have to write your command in such a way that it went looking for the user inside of the registry.
Okay.
Because that's where it appears. But it isn't. Phyllis's correction to my statement is absolutely 100% correct.
Hey, sorry, Phyllis, I didn't know that.
Okay, so I'm going to actually even close PowerShell down now, and I've got the integration services installed. I am going to bring up my folder here, go in and go into users, student, and you'll see here there's no proc. Click on this.
There it is.
There it is, and actually has the processors. So that is really, and I can't believe that I didn't, actually, no, you know what, that was planned. That was completely planned.
Well, you planned that just to show that integration services needs to be installed in order for that to work. So
Absolutely correct.
When,
All right.
When you're doing commands.
When you're doing commands, not when you're doing type text.
Right, that is correct.
That's the beauty of type text is that it doesn't require integration services. Everything else does. All right, there's only time for one more thing, and this is sort of an extra special thing before we say thank you for watching. And that is that a lot of times when you have a really complicated step, or if you have a step that repeats over and over and over, like log on to the machine, you often get tired of typing the exact same commands over and over. So we actually have a feature inside of the exercise where you can grab a specific exercise or a specific task and save as a template, and then load that template repeatedly over and over.
It's a very useful feature, especially if you've got long content, a lot of content, and you're constantly repeating within that content. It's a very useful feature to do that.
Right. So I'm going to save this as a template for just me, and I'm going to leave it as this appears on the right-hand side. Click on OK. And I'm going to cancel that. I'm going to go down to go up to a completely different exercise. And I'm going to say new task, load from template, belongs to me. This appears along the right-hand side. Boom,
there
populated.
It is.
All right. Now, there are a couple of things that don't transfer over as well. Things like when you have a machine selected, it won't automatically select the same machine because it doesn't want to assume that you're always selecting the same machine. So you may have to select a couple of these things. It also doesn't copy the screenshot over because it assumes that you might want a different screenshot. But other than that, really, really good at a time saving. You know this well from doing many content conversions.
That's correct. From manuals to IDL,
All right, so I want to say that we have done a much better job of covering this than I thought we possibly could, because we have shown exactly what things can possibly occur to those people who are out there and doing these steps. So I want to thank Victor for being here. I want to thank you for being here, and I want to put my slide up that says thank you. This has been the Adding Interactivity with IDL Studio, and we will see you soon.
Yes, bye.